Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
It's the gift that doesn't seem to stop giving. Bitcoin is a so-called currency created virtually by, well, we're not quite sure who. A year ago, one Bitcoin was worth a measly £580. And then it rose up slowly through the year and then suddenly, in the last few months, has spiked up remarkably to £12,400. Something of a one-way bet, some might think, despite the cryptocurrency's extreme volatility and links to the criminal underworld. And then, this week, more mania, as people who want to speculate on the future value of Bitcoin were allowed to do so on the first regulated platform in Chicago. I spoke to the chief executive of the Chicago Board Options Exchange and asked him whether this was just another form of inadvisable gambling.
We're not endorsing Bitcoin, but what we wanted to do is bring transparency to a commodity where there is interest. And your only choice before we launched on Sunday was to represent that interest on a crypto exchange somewhere around the globe, one without the oversight that we're used to.
Reassuring words there from Ed Tilley. But on this side of the Atlantic tonight, a warning, and a pretty strong one. I spoke to Andrew Bailey, Chief Executive of the Financial Conduct Authority, an important regulator. I asked him how concerned he is about Bitcoin's meteoric rise in value.
It's actually not regulated by us in its Bitcoin form. Where we come in is where there are instruments that are referenced to Bitcoin. It's a very volatile commodity in terms of its pricing, as you look at what's happened this year. And I would caution to people, we know relatively little about what, in a sense, forms the price of Bitcoin. It's an odd commodity as well because the eventual supply is fixed. If you want to invest in Bitcoin, be prepared to lose all your money. That would be my serious warning.
What evidence do you have at the FCA about who is actually buying Bitcoin?
We don't regulate Bitcoin as such, so we don't know.
Isn't that the problem, Mr. Bailey, that you don't regulate? The technology is ahead of you.
Well, I'll come back to that. I think the decision on what we regulate is appropriately for government and parliament, and we don't regulate commodities. We regulate instruments that are referenced to commodities. So if you buy a future or you buy an option, then we do come into the picture, but we don't regulate commodities per se. And that's clear. It would be for Parliament ultimately to make that choice if it wished to do so. I don't press for that, providing people understand very clearly this is a very volatile commodity.
What evidence do you have, or do you have any intelligence on who actually is buying Bitcoin itself rather than the instruments referenced to Bitcoin?
Well, we have no evidence as such because, of course, one of the features of Bitcoin is the anonymity of who the recorded owners are, and that emanates from the technology that supports it. You can't go somewhere and look up the record of who owns Bitcoin.
The fact that it's called a currency, the fact that there are ATMs, do you think that people actually realise they're not investing in something like the pound or the dollar?
Well, I think there's a risk to that. I mean, I think that you're right that by adopting the name cryptocurrency, there is a risk that some people regard it as the same as what in an economist world you'd call a fiat currency. And a fiat currency is backed by a state. That's what keeps in a sense, the value of. That's what preserves the value of fiat currency through the actions that central banks take. Bitcoin is not that. It's a commodity. It's not a currency.
Would it make your regulating of financial stability, protecting consumers easier if you had more powers in this area?
I don't think Bitcoin is prevalent enough at the moment to be a systemic threat in the way that we've experienced, obviously, during the financial crisis, other threats. It needs watching carefully, but I don't think it's at that point. If I thought there was evidence that people were saying, you know what I'm going to put my pension into? Bitcoin, I would be very concerned. Now, we don't see that at the moment. Maybe it's part of a big portfolio, but again, if it is, it should be done by people who say, I don't mind losing all the value of that piece.
Some people might say that technology is leaving the regulators behind, that you're racing to catch up and you simply don't understand how that market is working.
So there's a whole new technology which is really about the Bitcoin production and sort of maintenance process.
Pretty opaque.
Yeah, I mean, they're mined. My understanding is, I think it's 21 million can ever be mined, and I think possibly something like 17 odd million have been mined. So that makes it unusual, and we'd like to understand it so that if it does begin to get wider use, we've got greater familiarity with it.
Andrew Bailey, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kamal.